Shalom. So, earlier this week, when I was in John chapter 4, that's where Yeshua meets the woman at the well. It was some things that kind of stood out to me. Some of it was stuff that had already stood out to me, but the other things that stood out to me kind of like married the other things. One of them was in verse 4 where it said he had to go through Samaria. So, if you look at a map of this nation, you'll see that you have Galilee, Samaria, and then Judea. I want to say that Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, and then Judea was the southern kingdom. So in 722 BC, the Assyrians conquered Samaria, and they brought in people from other nations. Babylon was one of the peoples. The Babylonian people were one of the peoples that they brought in to inhabit and kind of cultivate that land. So the Samaritans that lived there started to mix Judaism and paganism together. And to the Orthodox Jews, they were considered unclean, ungodly, so on and so forth. So whenever they would have to travel from Galilee to Judea, they would travel around Samaria. But the fact that Jesus said, or Yeshua said, that he had to travel through Samaria lets you know that his meeting was intentional, but it was more intentional than I had initially seen. Because I'm thinking that he went there to meet the woman at the well, which he did, but it was an even greater purpose behind it that I missed. Now, if you're watching this, you might not have missed it, but I did. So I'm going to tell what was revealed to me, in case you're also like me and you missed this entire revelation. So, they had this encounter. He asked her for some water. She's like, how is it you, who's a Jew, asked me, a Samaritan woman, for something to drink? And then, they have this conversation. Then he's like, if you had asked me, I would have given it to you. Whoever drinks this water that I have, they're never going to thirst again. She's like, yo, I want that water. So he goes, go call your husband and come back here. And it's so funny because let's go back a little bit further. So the well is a place of betrothal. You'll see a lot of biblical marriages started at a well. For instance, the servant that came, Isaac's servant that came to find him a wife, found Rebecca at the well. Moses met Zipporah at the well when she was watering her father's flock. Jacob met Rachel at the well. Abraham met his second wife, Keturah, at the well. And I'll put the references to these. These are all found in Genesis except for Moses and Zipporah that's found in Exodus. I'll put the scripture references below. But they all met at the well. So the first thing I'm thinking about is he's at this well with this woman. It was considered very taboo, I guess you could say, for a man of his stature to be seen alone in public with a woman, especially a woman of her reputation. So that was first and foremost. But then she was there around noon, it says. And that was typically not the time that most women went to the well. They usually went in the cooler parts of the day. This was the hottest point of the day. So that lets you know that she had some type of reputation about her, because she wasn't there with the rest of the women. She was by herself. So he said, go call your husband. And that made me think about in Genesis, when after Adam and Eve had eaten from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it says that God was walking through the garden and he was calling out to Adam. And Adam, when he, found him, he was like, why were you hiding? He was like, I didn't want you to see me because I'm naked. And he was like, who told you you were naked? So it's kind of like the same thing, but the outcome is different. So this is actually where you see the redemption take place. Like, it's like the switch, the turning point, because in Genesis, when God's like, who told you were naked? And then, like, because he's God, he's Yahuwah, he's almighty. He already knew the answer to this question, but he was giving Adam a chance to tell him the truth. But Adam chose the blame game. The woman that you gave me, like, he literally blamed God and Eve at the same time. The woman that you gave me. And then Eve's like, but the serpent. Nobody actually took accountability for what they had done. And it was like pointing fingers everywhere. But in this case, the woman at the well, she didn't do that. She responded the way Adam and Eve should have responded. And she said, I don't have a husband. And then Yeshua said, "You have correctly said, I don't have a husband." Jesus said, "For you have had 5 husbands, and the man you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." So then they go into this conversation, and she asked him, well, she says, that, "I see you're a prophet." And then she's like, "Our ancestors worship on this mountain, your ancestors worship on that mountain." He's like, "There's going to come a time when you're not going to worship in any mountain." So she's talking about, religion, traditions of men. And he's like, "Yo, throw all that out. There's going to come a time where it doesn't matter where you worship, but it's how you worship and to whom you are worshiping." And he's like, "Believe me, woman, an hour is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you don't know. We worship who we do know, because salvation is from the Jews." So that kind of makes me think she's not a Jewish woman. Like, I always thought that she was a Jewish woman that was engulfed in paganism and Judaism practices. But at this point, I'm kind of like, is she just strictly a Samaritan who happens to practice Judaism alongside her paganism? Like, I'm not quite sure about that, but I'm like, because it would make sense. You worship what you don't know, because you're just out here dabbling in Judaism, where the Jews actually, like, this is their life. This is their life. This is what they do. They know to whom they're worshiping. You don't. But an hour is coming, and now is here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Yes, the Father wants such people to worship him. So he's like, Jesus came first for the Jews and then for the Gentiles. The Gentiles is just anybody who's not Jewish. So you kind of see him offering his hand, because to me, this is like a proposal. He's offering his hand in marriage, but it's not a physical marriage, it's a spiritual marriage. He's asking to marry her spiritually. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know it sounds horrible, but just go with me for a second. So I always wondered, what if she didn't have a name because she represents us? I mean, she's obviously physically a harlot, but like spiritually, she's a harlot too. She's practicing all this paganism mixed with Judaism. And that's us. We are spiritual harlots to our to our bridegroom, Yeshua HaMashiach. We worship all this other stuff, and then we like throw his name in there, and we think that it's cool. And like, he's literally offering his hand in marriage. When he comes to us, he does the same thing. He's offering his hand in marriage. He's the bridegroom, and we are the bride. So he's like, "I just want you to worship me. Like, all that other stuff, like, it's all good and dandy, but do you really have a love for me in your heart?" That's what he means by spirited in truth. And God is spirit. Those who worship him will worship him in spirit and in truth. And then she's like, "The woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." She's she's showing her lack of knowledge about who the Messiah is. Jesus told her, "I, the one speaking to you, am he." So then the disciples the disciples roll up. She winds up leaving her water, going back, and then she literally preaches the gospel. "Come see a man who told me everything that I ever did." That is her literally preaching Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. She responded the way we're all supposed to respond when we come into contact, when we come into relationship with him. She left behind what she came there for, and she literally went out and told everybody about him. She didn't even take the thing that she came there for. She didn't need it anymore. She no longer needed it. And I'm going to skip all this other stuff. I just want to point out, it says, the disciples said to one another, "Could someone have brought him something to eat? My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work," Jesus told them. And that just reminds me of John 6, where it says, John 6:29, Jesus replied, "This is the work of God, that you believe in the one who he has sent." But going down from verses 39 to 45 in chapter 4, it talks about how after the woman tells the Samaritans about Yeshua, they go see him, and then they tell her, "At first we believed because of what you said, but now we believe because of we have seen it for ourselves." All right, so I just want to pause right there, because one of the problems that the Pharisees and some of the Jews had with Yeshua was because they assumed that the Messiah would come kind of like Joshua, like a warrior, like Joshua was, riding in, like just slaying their enemies before their very eyes. And he did that, but in a whole different way, because he wasn't physically slaying the enemies, he was spiritually slaying the enemies. Because in chapter 4, from verses 39 to verse 45, we see Yeshua take back territory. Because you remember in 722 BC, the Assyrians took Samaria. And in John 4, John chapter 4, verses 39 to the 45, we see Jesus take back the territory of Samaria. It said that all of Samaria believed in him. I'm trying to let y'all know, like, that part was like, it blew my mind. I was like, bruh, he literally sat down at a well and took an entire territory back from the devil. He's amazing. And then he heals the royal official's son just by, like, he wasn't even there. He was like, your son is healed, okay? And it was some things that, Ruach HaKodesh show me in this, like the royal official's son, like he was in Cana when this happened. Cana is the city where he performed his first miracle of turning the water into wine. But it's just that one little part, and he offers his hand in marriage, and then he takes back the entire territory. Like, he shows himself as the bridegroom, he shows himself as the Messiah, and then he shows himself as the conquering king. And this is the part that a lot of the Jews, and even a lot of us to this day, miss about him. That is how powerful. He not one time had to pick up a physical weapon. He walked into Samaria, a place that the Jews would not go, and he took back an entire territory. Look at how big Samaria is. He took back an entire territory by sitting at a well and having a conversation with a woman. Like that, do you know how? So what had me focusing on quite often, I just keep hearing Ruach HaKodesh say, just tell them about me. That's it. That's all you got to do. Point them to me. We get these conferences together. We sit and we try to come up with all these elaborate and entertaining ways to draw people in. We got these seeker-friendly services. And all he did was have a conversation. And then she went and she told them about the conversation, like her encounter, her new relationship. And her telling them about that relationship drew the Samaritans to come to Jesus. And then once they got there, they didn't just believe because of what she told them. They believed because they had come into a relationship themselves. Listen, bruh. I just want y'all to know, like, I don't know. Maybe you're sitting there watching the video like, that's it. But to me, I'm like, bruh, that's it. Like, just that quick. Took back an entire territory that for centuries was under Assyrian rule. The influence of the Assyrians was still there. I mean, they had been conquered by other people since then, but I'm just saying, like, all of the people that had conquered them leading up to this moment, that the influence of all of their captors was still in the land, and he literally just came in an instant. He took back territory. All right, you guys. Well, I hope that you got as excited about this as I did. I mean, I know it seems like I was like overly excited for that, and some of you probably don't feel the same way that I do about it, but I just feel like it's freaking awesome. Like, it's amazing. So yeah, this is my king. I don't know. You may not claim him as your king, but this is my king. He sits at a well and he conquers a nation. He really conquered the world, but I'm just saying, like, bruh, what you conquering? All right, you guys. I love you.